Until our leaders understand what security is and what it takes to give us security, we keep on running up and down. Can you imagine that for months now, over many years, they have been talking about this issue of a state police. But ask yourself, where are they? What is the options and what is the ideas that these senators have been offering about state police? These guys are not offering anything reasonable about this state police. All they are doing is just running around trying to set up an agency without anything what reasonable. This is Senator Abaribe. This is what he says, say governors will destroy state police like they did to local government. If the fund meant for state police didn't go directly to the state commission, Abaribe wants. These Senate, these are the people that are supposed to bring ideas. Do you know up to right now, today that I'm talking to you, both the National Assembly, the president, they don't know the kind of state police they want. They don't know the kind of police. You remember I say in Nigeria, what we have is a reactive police, no police. I've never seen any of them discuss anything relating to those angles. Here is Abaribe. Hear him speak.
Police must be funds that will go to the state police commission must be guaranteed by the constitution and go directly to the commission, so that what we are seeing today with regard to local government funds, we don't have to see it with the police, because if we do that, then for people like us who come from the southeast, where in 2 or 3 kilometers you see 10 checkpoints, you will now have 100 checkpoints by state people who will have to fend for themselves if they don't have the requisite funding. In those aspects of the constitution, because I've seen 2 or 3 where it says that the president will mail.
Now you understand, you see, this is one of the concerns that he mentioned there, this issue of crowded police on the roadside, because that's something that Nigerian people are not been discussing about. That is one of the consequences of state police in Nigeria. You notice that when you look along the road, you see road safety, you see all forms of police checkpoints. Imagine where we have state police. Do you know what will happen? That means on a single road, you might see more than 100 checkpoints. You will see federal police, you will not see state police on the same road. And that is how they will keep on harassing Nigerians. You see, this concern that they share there about multiple police checkpoints on the road because of federal and state police, it's one of the concerns I shared earlier when it comes about this issue of state police, because I know that Nigerians, people are not talking much about these angles in order to help break down what do they mean by state, because you see them keep on talking about state. What kind of police do they want? Even in terms of having a state police, they're supposed to have a general reform, overall police law enforcement reform in Nigeria. But I don't blame them, because they do not even have the crew. They don't have an idea. Do you know where it gets worse is that even the police heads, law enforcement, and the body military, they don't know exactly what to do, the angle, what it takes. Even when you hear people talk about reform, ask them this specific question. What kind of reform are you talking about? They don't know. It's a serious problem. They don't know. All they do is talk about reform, but they don't understand the kind of reform they are talking about. Here he is talking about, in the east, you see checkpoints everywhere. Some of the checkpoints you are supposed to take to the north is right here in the east.
Merely write a letter and take over, or merely write a letter to... No, we think that not just the president, but that power must also be shared with the National Assembly and the Senate in particular, just like we have done in state of emergency. Because we cannot have a...
And they're even talking about this issue of sharing of power, between the state governors and the National Assembly and with the president. Is it, what kind of police are you talking about? You are talking about sharing of a power and for police that don't even know their power, their duties. What is the duties? What are the responsibilities of state police? And what becomes of the federal police? You discuss all of these things in detail before talking about sharing of power, before even talking about how bad the state police will be. Because you see why instead of things they are supposed to be discussing, they are not discussing. Instead, they are discussing things that is what? Unreasonable, things that you don't even need at this point in time. So,
looks at a state, maybe he's not in good terms with the governor, and decide that he will take it over. How would you go against that? So I think that we should look very much into that. The second and the last part of what I will look into is the question of funding. Today, we are aware that states have far more funding than before. But we also had a time in which states didn't have as much money, which means that he who pays the piper will also dictate the tune. So what we will have to ensure that we go into the act.
Now, what is Abaribe trying to say here? Now, if the federal government are the one doing the funding, that is to tell you that federal government will be the one dictating the directions, how state police works. That means federal government will still have more say. National Assembly will still have more say. That is what Abaribe is trying to tell you right now. And that is where I'm also have been, as in keep on hammering this issue of state police. They keep on discussing things that are not relevant at this point in time. Funding is so important, but first, you need to understand the kind of police you are talking about before talking about funding. What kind of police? Do you still want the state police to be like this current police? And you say you want to what? You want to give us security, law and order in this country called Nigeria with this same system of police? Even when people are talking about police reform, what kind of reform are you talking about? Because you see, these are the questions that they don't ask these individuals whenever they talk about this issue of state police. Here is from Natasha. You see, what it says, Natasha backs state police, demands safeguards against abuse. Hear her speak.
Were constant. Houses were burned, people were killed. There was no time that I would get on the field to campaign that we would not go home with at least 18 to 20 persons shot. And I did pay the Commissioner of Police, Commissioner Busari, a visit. And often, most times he would tell me that his hands were tied. He would tell me to please reach the national police, that is the IG of police at the force headquarters, to instruct him, because at the state level, his hands were tied. And it got to a point when I remember a particular moment, the thugs, the political thugs, were walking openly, equipped with guns, and they were in company of the police. So I drew his attention to that with pictures, and I say, here you have the thugs surrounded by your policemen. Wouldn't you call them to order? Do you know what he told me? He said, Madam, why don't you recruit your own thugs too, to balance power?
So now this is Natasha Odwaya, still showing her own concern. Her own concern is police, this federal police, working with thugs. In fact, intimidating people that are supposed to be protected. And that is the same thing I've been saying. They are talking about this issue of state police over and over without talking about reform. And even when you talk about reform, what kind of reform? Nigerian law enforcement agencies are reactive law enforcement agents. And in every other developed world, police is not supposed to be reactive. They're supposed to be proactive. And our government do not understand even what it takes to reform police to the standard for where through which they will be proactive. So when you see this concern from Natasha Odwaya, police working with thugs, how do they balance through those two equations? Because you see, like employing your own personal security is common all over the world. It's not a crime. But how do you balance in a situation whereby police do their work and without working alongside with thugs in order to intimidate people they are supposed to be protecting? When an individual employs his own personal security and police is there, police work is to make sure that those personal security does not cross their own boundary. Look at her. You can see that she said that even the commissioner of police telling her to employ her own thugs if she don't like the way they are operating. Is it the same police? Imagine a police that are operating this way and you want to add more police that operate that way at the state level. That is our own concern. So in order, when we talk about this police, they should be well defined. When you hear people speak the idea of a police, a restoration of police, ask the person, what do you mean by a restoration of police? What is your own idea? Let me hear you speak. Let's hear Oshomole speak on our own side of what he thinks about state police.
What is the tool of a forces security. If a state has to have responsibility for primary health care, can it do so without the Ministry of Health? So I cannot be a state security officer. I have no control. I can't give orders to the police. I can't discipline my instrument of control. I cannot promote. I cannot recruit. So it's like calling me a husband, but I have no wife. So I think that over the ages, people.
So for Oshomole, when you notice all of this discussion, they are not discussing of in details what this state police, their responsibility, and what are the things that are not their responsibility. We can't hear them. They are just giving excuses. Now, this is what it said. Crediting governors as CSOs of state without control is like calling a man husband who has no wife. That is Oshomole. There is an inherent contradiction in the provision of the Constitution. The state governor is designed as the chief security officer. But what tools does he have to enforce security? How can a state chief security officer have no authority to give order to the police? If any governor misuses state police, Nigerians have the right to vote that individual out of office. Now, this is Oshomole saying this. I know there is more. You see, because when they talk about this is about autonomy, because he is trying to advocate for autonomy, that's law enforcement autonomy, which is a good thing. That is the way it is all over the world. This is Adams Oshomole, federal lawmaker representing Edo's senatorial district. Now, when you notice Adams Oshomole, his idea, his own opinion is quite good. But remember, in those countries that have complete law enforcement autonomy, as a authority over their police, those countries, states, are states that have how do I put it? Those are states, okay, countries like United States of America, they have state autonomy. That means the state is independent from the federal government. They operate on their own. They have their own judiciary. In the United States of America, every state have their own Supreme Court. They have their own, in fact, everything. They have their own Senate. They have their own National Assembly. They have their own National Assembly. Let me put it that way. And they have their own Supreme Court. They have everything that's at the federal level. So they operate, every state in the U.S. operate like a nation. Now in Nigeria, we are not that way. We are operating a federation. Everything is cycled, a centralized government. That's what Nigeria is operating. So there is no way you expect governors to have sole responsibility of law enforcement, because that is what he's trying to advocate. But those are not the things that we are supposed to be discussing in this kind of atmosphere where we are battering with this issue of insecurity. They're supposed to be discussing the items, the content of law enforcement agents, the items of the security, or they are supposed to be discussing about the item, the provisions. What does it entail? When you discuss about the state police, what is the content? Should be their work? And what will be made, or as in what will now be made of the federal police? Because listen, they just a discussion. When did they already finish all this conversation about this state police, what they should be doing, and what federal police should be doing? That is when they will start talking about all this issue of governors, waiting to be their part and waiting to be the part of the federal government and the National Assembly. So let's hear more from Oshomole.
First, my view is that there is inherent contradiction if you look at the provisions of the Constitution. The state governor is the chief security officer. What is the tool of a forces security? If a state has to have responsibility for primary health care, can it do so without the Ministry of Health? So I cannot be a state security officer. I have no control. I can't give orders to the police. I can't discipline my instrument of control. I cannot promote. I cannot recruit. So it's like calling me a husband, but I have no wife. So I think.
So it's to its own idea, all that is being called a war, complete state autonomy in terms of law enforcement.
Is it working?
But that is not how it should be. There's no way in this country called Nigeria that states will have sole responsibility of a law enforcement, especially in terms of police. What is supposed to be done in Nigeria is whereby the situation whereby they will share the responsibility, just like in every other nations. They will break it down that this is an internal law enforcement agency. Police will have responsibility, then the federal police have to almost turn like FBI. That is what Nigerian law enforcement is supposed to be. Then when you turn out that way, remember, funding of the law enforcement agencies is another thing. Because that is where all of these things going. When you want to make the law enforcement agency at state level to be the sole responsibility of the state, funding becomes an issue. Then the states will start pursuing for what? To be what? Autonomous. All of this is linked from one level to the other. All of that is why you see in all these videos I've been doing relating to this issue of security, I keep on calling them, look, all these people are mistakes that they do. This is what they call misplaced superiority. This is what they're supposed to do, is setting up the command and control center that I keep on calling well equipped, and it's less expensive than state police. Security of this country, Nigeria have been highly populated, so security has gone beyond police alone. Then if you want to talk about this state police, it comes with a lot. States need to be independent for them to be able to do everything, for them to be able to generate enough resources to care for the law enforcement, to care for health, education, and every other sectors. Because I know what Adams Oshiomhole is supposed to call. Yes, in terms of health, he said that yes, they are the one taking the sole responsibility of primary health care. Imagine adding the responsibility, because you notice governors, even as much as they want the state governors to control state police, governors don't want to take the sole responsibility of the funding. Just the same way they are taking the sole responsibility of funding under health. That is to tell you the weight that comes with it. And at the federal level, you won't see a president won't be funding state police and carry the whole law, as in the whole power, to recruit everything and hand over to the governor. That is where all this is running up and down. So let's hear more questions from this issue of state police. This is from Shady.
And good afternoon, sir. I guess I should adopt the existing line and say I extend my appreciation. No, thank you very much.
So before Shady, because you know that this man speaks so much grammar, look at what he said. When you look at my screen right now, you see what Shady or Denkalo said. Okay, let's highlight it so that it will be clear. He said, giving governors state police power during an election season raises serious concern. We want to give governors the power of state policing in an election season, and we are not allowed to ask why that should be so. We are creating state police with no transitional arrangements. Yet we are told that these are minor issues. The invitation to the state court is an invitation to anarchy. Nigerian human rights activists and lawyer Shady Odenkalo. So this is on what? Its own concern is about, this handing over this issue of authority of this state police to them at this period.
I guess I should adopt the existing line and say I extend my appreciation to His Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I will sing on your mandate. But since my voice is very bad, let me begin by, now there's a gap here, and there's a reason for it. It's actually for the Nigerian public officers who have elected to abandon ship so that this will be a conversation of irrelevance. That's why I've refused to move closer, because they need to be represented in this conversation as ongoing stakeholders. This conversation is so significant that citizens are not invited to the table. So it's a conversation among politicians, fixing for themselves their own instruments of power. That's the first thing. So when I listen to these politicians here talk about, give us examples from America and from all of that, I want us to start by acknowledging this is a uniquely Nigerian conversation. That's why there are no public officers. They've run away. So let's not fool ourselves. And I want to make 5 very quick clarifications along those lines. Number one, we are talking about reforming the most fundamental power of a state in election season. We're in the election season, and we're talking of reforming the...
Please, in order to correct what Shade or the Kali is saying, this is not even police reform. Because you're calling it a reform. What kind of reform? Because see, reform is when you change a system from the ways of operating to a new system that is more what? More active. Because all these things, they call them police reform. And they be reform. This is just doing the same thing in another style. That is what they are doing. Setting up a state police, working in the same way the same federal police is working. This is not what they call police reform. Because these are the grammars they keep on injecting this idea of security. You are setting up a state police, giving them their own power, working side by side with federal police, doing the same work. This is tautology in English, as in trying to use this different word to say the same thing. This is the Nigerian government trying to set up 2 law enforcement agencies doing the same work without separating their power, without separating their responsibility. It is not reform. Nigerian law enforcement right now is reactive. When it becomes reform, when it changes from reactive to proactive, that is when you say that, yes, Nigerian law enforcement agency is what has been reformed.
This morning, we've learned that there are, in fact, 2 different versions of the bill going through the National Assembly. An executive bill passed by the Senate and a different one passed by the National Assembly. No citizen has seen those bills nor participated in reviewing them, as citizens are entitled to do. If we are talking about using the police to protect citizens, and citizens are not part of it, who will the politicians be doing business with? Bandits and terrorists? Are they the interlocutors?
Now, that is where this issue of law enforcement agencies come. Because you know that we don't talk this over and over. Why we keep on getting it wrong? Now they are comparing this law enforcement agency that, yes, in the United States of America, that the state police, issue of policing is solely lies on the state government. And they forget this idea that the law enforcement agency, that 80% is done by the citizens, while 20% is done by those security agencies. If the citizens do not cooperate with the law enforcement agency, they will be what? You keep on seeing crimes and all of these things happening. You keep on seeing disorder. You keep on seeing terrorism. Because they are making all of this comparison without bringing the people, those people that are supposed to be so part of this security world arrangement, they are not involved. Up till now, we don't even know the content of the state police. We don't know their response. Imagine that tomorrow we see they will just roll out some group of people telling that they're state police. We, the citizens, we don't even know we don't know their work, and we don't know our part to play. And tomorrow they will tell you that state police is not working. How can they work where you remove the people that are supposed to be part of the conversation? The people that are supposed to be part of setting the direction, giving their own opinion, what should be there and what should not be there. Comparing United States of America, whereby citizens are doing the 80% of the law enforcement agency. Because see, cooperating with law enforcement agency, that is 80% of it. Imagine a state like Minnesota, city like the state of Minnesota. I think there's this, is it Minneapolis or what? We only have around 600 police officers there, a whole big city, and there's law and order. That is because the citizens are cooperating with the police. When you roll out a state police, and these state police don't even have any relationship with the citizens, and you expect there to be law and order. You expect there for the security. Or they are just rolling out a law enforcement agency for the politician like Shidon, they can't be saying. You see, there's sense to all the point that the man is making.
That the politicians will be doing business with. Why are they so afraid of citizens that none is invited to the table? They tell us that before the legislative proposals were considered, they had consultations with citizens? Why are there no citizens seeing the draft proposals and making inputs into them? Now, the other point is this. We are talking about governors as chief security officers of the states. And everything is being done in the framework of security. Let's remind ourselves, the police is a law enforcement institution. There's a difference in the Nigerian scheme between security and law enforcement. It's such an easy distinction to miss. Why do I say so? Under our scheme, nobody here has cited Section 315 of the Constitution. It preserves 4 different pieces of legislation. One is the National Security Agencies Act. Under Section 2 of the National Security Agencies Act, primary responsibility for internal security in Nigeria is not with the police. It is with the who? State Security Service. The governors.
You see where they keep on getting it. That is the idea of
trying
to
complaining that we should decentralize the security service. They are complaining they should own the police. These are governors who have never funded their ministries of justice. Now, they will put money to give to police because police is used for rigging elections. They will not fund the ministries of justice, which are essential for putting away criminals who endanger Nigerians. And nobody here is talking about the funding of ministries of justice. Ask all of these governors who have run away how much they have spent on their ministries of justice in the past 4 years. It is, you can count it on your fingers. But they are investing in the police, and they want us to believe that this is about how to protect the.
So that is the same thing we are saying. This thing they call police reform is not actual police reform. That's just a simple fact. Now, internal security lies with what? State CID. They are the ones that are supposed to be doing more of the work of a law enforcement. Look, one of the things that are playing out in Nigerian law enforcement agency right now is never about trying to recruit more police. It's in a way trying to restructure the system of police we have for it to proactive instead of reactive, and also try to bring the citizens of the country to be part of security. These people are called law enforcement agency, but they are not witchcraft. They are not computers. They are not everywhere. You see, in all of this conversation they keep on having about state police, all this, ask themselves, do you need to feast every one single police station, police officer or 3 police officers in every single street in Nigeria? No. But you have the citizens in every single corner of the country. They are the ones, these are where the conversation, but they are not going that direction. Apart from the opinion from Shide, they can say that he made so many points. Imagine, like I mentioned earlier, police is state government, even in terms of trying to have this state police. Can you take the sole responsibility of the funding? There are so many other areas, ministries in the state level, that is not well funded. Even when you see Oshomole choosing and dropping the rest, is mentioning primary health care. Ask yourself, what kind of health care do we even have at the state level? There are some villages, there's no health centers. There are some places, no schools. And you are saying that you want to take the sole responsibility of state policing. And this is also election period. What do you need state police? Why are they rushing it to make sure that it happened before election period? Because they needed it so badly in order to make sure that they rig the election. That is one concern, but these are not the conversation we should be having right now. So like I said before, in case they have been telling you that they want to restructure the police, this and that, this is not police restructuring. So that they'll stop using, this is not just duplicating what has already been existing. This one they tried to duplicate the same police with the political purpose. The police is an institution, a primary role about law enforcement, but in all this discussion, no one is talking about law enforcement or justice.
Now, first of all, no, thank you for that question. Now, the first thing is this, as I tried to explain today, in this entire conversation about state police, you've not heard the most important expression that you will hear if you're discussing policing in a civilized country: law enforcement. Have you?
Did you say law enforcement?
Law enforcement.
Right.
Have you ever, in this entire conversation, heard law enforcement? No. Why? Because this is not about law enforcement. This is about deploying the policing power for political purposes.
Well, that's a fairly narrow way to look at it, isn't it?
Now, you see,
No.
policing, the police as an institution.
Now, you can see that Mr. Charles is trying to say that this is a narrow way of describing what it is. No, it is not. This is not about what this is not about law enforcement. This is not about our security. This is what the people at the state level trying to protect themselves, because they have seen the direction that these things are going. They have seen that the war is coming closer and closer to them, politicians. Now, I put it this way, because here they call him, it made so much sense. That's why you see it took me so much time to do this video about this state policing. Now watch, ask yourself, why are the people at the state level, why are they in a hurry to have this? This issue of terrorism is coming closer to the what? To the politicians. Before, it used to be, the people Boko Haram kidnapping the ordinary citizens. But right now, it has come closer to them. And they needed work protection. Not even for election rigging alone, but their own personal work protection. You see, when a governor has a power over policing, you will be able to distribute it among all his commissioners. They will be able to protect themselves. And they'll be able to also use it even in election period. That is you giving excess power without defining it. You see, that's why even in order to even use this police, before setting up state police, Nigerian police have to be well restructured from this reactive to proactive. The citizens of Nigeria have to be part of the law enforcement agency. They do not understand the issue of security. They keep on putting it, thinking that police, military, civil defense, so on and so forth, that the security of the nation solely rely on them. They just do 20% of the job. 80% lies with the citizens. This issue of state police, they have been clamoring, is never about law enforcement. It's about them, the politicians. You see, Nigerian youths, young Nigerians, I don't know why people are not discussing so much about issues like this. I'm trying to look into seeing young Nigerians discussing conversation, but no.
It's primarily about law enforcement. If you listen to Governor Oshomole today, who was one of the more articulate voices in support of...
Senator Adams Oshomole.
Correct.
Right.
Now, he talked about the role of the governor as the chief security officer of the state. But the chief security, and as I tried to explain, under the Nigerian system, the internal security is the responsibility of the SSS, the entity that many people now call the DSS. The State Security Service is responsible for internal security. And that channel runs directly to the president. Policing, under the Police Act, does law enforcement, which is forensic, it is clinical. State Security Service does internal security. That is prophetic. It relies on intelligence, and it can take steps that the police cannot take because the police needs the courts. Therefore, you cannot be talking about reforming police outside the justice system.
That's an important point.
This is the fundamental point. And nobody in this entire conversation is talking about justice. We are talking about security.
So how should they be talking about justice in this context?
Now, if you're talking about police as a justice institution, the first thing is, what are we doing with the justice system now as it is? Which is why I talk about the ministries of justice and what they do with them, and how the throughput and relationships between the justice ministry and the police as an institution has got to be managed. At the moment, none of this is happening in that context. And the second thing is...
This is one thing about Shidi Odenkalu, because this man speaks so much grammar, and without saying more, he might be offering an opinion, but the kind of grammar he keep on blowing, that is what confuses people. You can see even this man keep on confusing Charles and Nyagoro more and more with his grammar. Now, this is what needs to happen. Police and the justice system need to have a relationship. Imagine there are some people in the prison right now, they are awaiting trial. And the justice system at the state level are not well funded for them to work. For them, this is a quick, they call it extradited, quick, as in quick judgment. Understand? Quick judgment. But that will not happen. And right now, it's trying to tell you that, in fact, the focus of the state government is supposed to be SSS,